אחת ואחת, אחת ושתיים, אחת ושלוש, אחת וארבע, אחת וחמש.
Hi, Yona. You're the best.
ישר היה מתייאש, כי לא יכול היה לשאת את המהירות אחת.
I adore you.
את הפספוס, את ההפסד.
I'm sweating, so I might turn off my face later, but I'm here.
No problem.
שהיו שומעים את שם השם המפורש יצא מפי כהן גדול היו קוראים משתחווים ונופלים על פניהם
Great music.
ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד.
Hi, Peter. You look so cool. I hope the weather here is air conditioning.
פניו לקודש אחוריו.
Happy Sunday morning. Welcome everyone to this iteration of the Articulation series, where art informs Torah and Torah is formed in art. Today we have the stupendous opportunity to hear from two artists and holy souls in their own right. The artist Yona Verwer, who is the head of the Jewish Art Salon, founder, Dutch-born, as an artist in New York City. She holds a master's degree in the fine arts from the Royal Academy in Hague. And we have the founder of the Nitzotzot community, Rabbi Baruch Thaler, a spirit, an individual who received masters from Columbia Film, and a neo-chassid, beautiful individual. And we're so lucky to have had their conversations around a really interesting theological question, but I don't want to frame it. Rabbi Baruch, would you do the honors in giving us some context to this parsha?
Thank you, Dvir and Yona. Good afternoon or morning, wherever we are. Yes, straight into the parsha. There's, every week, every parsha, Torah itself is a form of art, but all the more so this week's parsha, Torah portion, which the main part of the Torah portion discusses the point-counterpoint of our practice and experience. That if we follow the path, the right path, and the mitzvot, then all positive, good blessings will shower upon us. Literally shower, as it says, rain will come down on your fields. Whereas if we do not follow the right way, we do not abide by the Torah way or God's will, then there is a whole litany of negative effects that will hit us. Some of it is quite gory. Could fit up there with some, apocalyptical film, drought, famine, praying animals. It sounds like all the 10 plagues showered on not on the Egyptians, but on those that don't, in general, who do not follow the Torah way. And in fact, if you look in the Torah portion, you'll see that whereas the blessings are given a few verses, maybe like 5 verses, when it comes to the curses, however, there's like 30 verses. There are way more curses and negative, catastrophic calamities that are depicted versus the blessings. In fact, according to the rabbis, if you count them out, there are 49 curses, whereas the blessings are maybe 5 or less, maybe 10 altogether. Why is this? So in there's a great teaching and message here that is for us all, for every one of us, and particularly for it also shows what is the role of the artist, which this is why we're all here. Creative Torah and Torah as art itself, the artist as a carrier of Torah. And that is that there are times in our lives that there are negative experiences happening, things that do not make sense to us. As they speak about in theology, that there is an entire discipline called theodicy. How do we deal when negative things happen to us, personally or in the world? And we all have gone through some form of suffering in our lives, or maybe on some level even now. So how do we deal with it? Why is it happening, and can we cope with it? So the message we have from this week's Torah portion is that even if on the surface it seems like terrible experiences that are happening, still there is an inner blessing, that the curse itself can be transformed into blessing.
Thank you. A lot to unpack, and I'm very excited to hear kind of like the back end of these questions. And now, Yona, would you please present to us what emerged from these ideas into the creation of your art?
Thank you, Devere. So when I first read the Parsha and I read about these blessings and curses, I immediately thought of another text in the Bible where the priests say blessings and curses, and then the people turn one way or the other, depending on whether it was a blessing or a curse, and they will turn towards a mountain. And when a positive blessing was said by the priest, they turned towards Mount Gerizim, and a negative to Mount Ebal. So Mount Gerizim is something that I and 7 other members of the Jewish Art Salon have become very familiar with over the last year, because that is where an ancient Israelite people live called the Samaritans. And 8 of us of the Salon had been invited to create artworks based on the Samaritans, but contemporary interpretations. So I'm just going to give you like a little sidebar about this before I go into the actual Parsha. If you could show the next image, Devere. This is part 1 of my image. It wasn't quite finished yet when I photographed this, but it's called Tabernacles, and it's the Samaritan side of a 2-sided piece. On this side, you'll see a Samaritan tabernacle based on ancient drawings and stuff. And then on the other side, it's just the next image. You'll see the Jewish version, which is based on medieval depictions. And the idea was that if you look at them from both sides, they have a lot in common, yet they are different. Just like the Jews have a lot in common with the Samaritans, yes, there are also very distinct differences. This show, by the way, will open September 15 at the Museum of the Bible in Washington. Anyway, that was the first association I had when I read this Parsha. Then I started studying with Rabbi Thaler, and he explained to me this concept of that a blessing can have a curse, and a curse can have a blessing, that they're almost reversible, which I found a fascinating concept. And if you would go to the next version, Devere. So I made 2 different images. To the left are the curses, to the right are the blessings. If you could go to the next on the Veer. Okay, so here we start with the curses. The one thing that was specifically brought up in the parsha was rain. Like God said to us, if you do this, if you do, follow my rules, etc., you will have, abundant rain. And Rabbi Thaler pointed out that rain can be a curse as well. You have too much of it, it's a flood. So here on the inside, the really dark area, it's hard to tell because I haven't had it photographed yet by a professional, but it's rain puddles. And there's like a stick of wooden branch sticking out. So basically everything is flooded and it's a curse. But I made it with a goldeny kind of crust, which is also hard to tell because it's not the best photograph. But the idea was that it's covered by something that has the tendency to be beautiful, like gold, while the other one, if you could go to the next one, yeah, that one, these are the blessings, is actually covered by lead or a lead-like material. So these are the blessings, and the blessings, they show a landscape, a desert landscape from Israel, and in front of it is like water that is rushing down the desert and is going to make everything fertile again. These I've made them with Phoenician plaster. That is to say, the crusts kind of resemble ourselves. We, the people, like if we open ourselves up a little bit to Hashem, to God's teachings, light, then we will experience, the blessings as blessings, hopefully, and the curses as blessings in disguise. But you need to open up. So the blessings piece is actually already opened up further than, let's say, the curses piece, which is still kind of closed off. But the funny thing is that this whole concept of they're kind of reversible, they're the same, different sides of the same coin. While I was working on the pieces and I hadn't painted the inside part yet, I constantly kept confusing them. Like, now which one is which again? And it really sort of integrated in me the idea of like, they are totally reversible. And also while I was working on it, I remembered something that happened to me 3 years ago, which was that I was in bad health and I was in a wheelchair for a couple of months. And I had no income, I had no savings. I couldn't even leave my apartment because, it was a walk up. So it certainly seemed like a curse. And then friends of mine dragged me literally out of my apartment to a weekend, which was a weekend for healing. And it was in those days, we're talking 1987, 88, it was primarily geared towards people who are suffering from the AIDS crisis, so patients and their caregivers. But it was all about healing, so it actually could apply to anyone. And at that weekend, I, for the first time, through the exercises that we did, got a glimpse that my physical condition was related to my mental condition. And I realized that I was really on a totally dead-end track with my life. And that was the beginning of, let's say, the rest of my life. So I realized that I too have been blessed with a curse, as it were, because it became like the best blessing of all. That's it so far. I can talk about it later, but I'd like to give it back to the Veer for now.
Thank you, thank you. So now with kind of those ideas holding space, Rabbi, can you continue your conversation around what to do with the abundance of curses in this portion?
Yes, thank you. So, as Yona so beautifully and personally showed us and shared with us that both in her personal life, even something that was a negative experience, still she was able to not only transcend it, but to use that as material and even inspiration to progress and to get to a farther level, a healing state that perhaps she wouldn't have reached otherwise. So the negative experiences in our lives, as constraining and as they may be, still with our perspective and our attitude, once they are in our lives, there are ways that we can almost use them as catapults, like a negative G-force to take us to higher levels than we would not have even before. And in fact, that is also the role of the artist, to alchemize, take our life experiences and make them as something beautiful, a certain aesthetic, heightened and even divine, giving it a divine shine and a teaching, a way that we can all be inspired and learn how to supersede and to get to some place that we wouldn't have otherwise. There's the prototypical suffering artist, as if it's not that we need to suffer to create art, but we all, like even in the Eastern teachings we have, that life, almost by definition, comes with a good dosage of suffering. And if it wasn't meant to be, that it wouldn't have happened to us. And then why is it happening? Well, perhaps this is the lesson. Like the Mishnah says at the end of the tractate Brachot, just like we're to bless God for the blessings, for the good that come into our life, so too we are to bless for the negative. Why and how? Because that is the way we really learn, and we get to a level that not only can we overcome those suffering negative experiences, but we can peel away, like Yona's shown us with her art, that there is an inner dimension that we may not initially see on the surface. And when we attune ourselves with the right perspective and with the right attitude, then we are able to show even the good in the worst that there is. Incidentally, just a couple days ago, I was going through my alma mater's magazine, Columbia University magazine, and there was a story there. I'll share it with you right here, if you could, if I can share screen, where they've done studies on the effects of bad memories on people, and what they've shown is that if you give the person who's gone through that negative experiences time to find the positive that came out of it, even let's say the loss of a loved one, which led to either the liberating of that person's suffering or to find a new way, a new path in life, what have you, if there's a reinforcement of the focus on the positive, then it actually changes the neurology of the person, and to overcome that and to get to a less, to a better state of being. So too, in our Torah portion, there are, especially the Hasidic masters, have dissected the various curses and shown that they are in fact blessings in disguise. There was a story of the first Chabad Rebbe. He would read the Torah for his Hasidim every Shabbat. One Shabbat for this week's Torah portion, for what is known as the Tochacha, the admonishments and the curses, he was out of town, and a regular Baal Koreh, reader of the Torah, read from this Torah scroll that Shabbat. The Alter Rebbe's son and successor, Rabbi Dov Ber, heard it, and he became chronically ill. He fainted, and he was beside himself for days and days. When his father came back to town, and he saw his son in pain, he asked him what happened. He said, I heard the curses read in the Torah, and it really affected me personally. So he was asked, but didn't you hear it all every year? The very same Torah read. Why this year did it affect you so much? So the son answered, well, when my father would read the Torah every year, I would only hear the blessings. However, this was the first year, being my father did not read it, that I heard the literal meaning of it and how heavy it is. So it's a matter of how we perceive it, how we hear it, how we relate to the experiences of our lives. Going from becoming more optimistic, go-getters, or ways. We know people have, it's known that there were people that had more or less the same experience during the Holocaust, and some were affected for life. Others were actually persevered and became even stronger from it. Not that we need to or should go through any suffering to get to that level of inner strength, but it's ex post facto. When we do have certain experiences in our lives, we are also empowered with the insight of this week's Torah portion to learn how to deal with it and how to boomerang that in a way that takes us to greater levels of maturity. So, and that is also the name of the Torah portion of this week, Bechukotai, meaning not only my decrees, but it also, the word chakuk means to be engraved, to be chiseled in us. That if we have our priorities and perspectives, part and parts of us, innately manifested, that we have this faith and trust that there is a reason for everything. So then telechu, if you will be in the state of bechukotai, then you will be able to progress and get to a higher level. Again, share screening. Here. In Bechukotai telechu, that you will be in a state of constant motion, movement, to get to higher levels. And then that's mitzvosai shemaru. We make the containers for these channelings of getting to higher levels. And then v'nasati gishmeichem be'itam, God ensures us that when we're in this state of propulsion towards the good, then we will, in response, receive the good not only on spiritual or realms, but physically. Geshem is the same word as physicality, gashmiut. Be'iton, in its appropriate time and way, we will realize that everything in our lives has a reason and purpose. V'natna ha'aretz yivula, and the aretz, the land, will give her produce. The word aretz can also be the word ratzon. When we have the proper will and drive and perspective, then that in itself will bear the fruits. Ratzon, the word ratzon also has the same word tzinor, channeling. The eitz hasadeh yitem perio, then even that which is in the field that seems desolate, yet that will produce and bring us our nourishment and meaning to our lives. And once we're in that way, when we are in a state of ever constant moving towards the good and having that positive attitude and actualizing and creating and making making good in the world through art, through our good deeds and and making the world a better place, then God reassures us He will or she will respond in kind and also be in that way of forever motion. It becomes this dynamic that we're able to go eventually to the state of being upright, komemiut, breaking the yokes, that heaviness on our backs, and go forward upright and take that which has made us bent down into actually a power of standing up double high, even higher than we were before. And this is really the role of the artist, to be in a state of alchemizing our experiences, whether physically or through health or in other ways, and being able to liberate that negative forces and transform them to the highest and positive. To give you an example of how the Hasidic masters saw even the curses as blessings, there's a couple examples here. For example, in the verse where it says, and that the God says, "And I will hifkadeti aleichem behola et hashachefes v'sakadachas." It says, "And I will wreak misery upon you, consumption and fever." Right? Uzeratem lirik, and you shall sow your seeds for no purpose, which your enemies will eat. So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Barditchev interpreted this in the other way. The word hifkadeti can not only mean I will do, and I will create, I will enact, but it can mean also from the word that it will be taken away. It's one of those Hebrew words that are oxymoronic. So here, Rabbi Yitzchak interpreted, it means v'ifkadeti aleichem, I will actually remove from you all the malady, illness, and fever. So too, zeratim larik, and you shall plant for nothing. The reason is because the Talmud says that when Mashiach comes, the Messiah comes, the fruits and everything will bear fruit bountifully, that there will be no need to plant, because things will naturally, organically grow to its best, most bountiful way. So in other words, any of your personal planting will be for naught, because it will be superfluous, not because it won't grow, but everything will be blooming already. Okay? So there is a way that we could take something that seems like a negative act or effect and see the positive out of it. So too, that there's a later verse that says that 10 women will be baking out of one oven, and you will have to measure your bread, and you would eat and be you wouldn't be full. This too is a teaching of how we can get to the highest states of serving God. That baking in an oven means to be full of holy rapture, fire, inflamed with love to the divine. So when we follow the Torah, which is associated with bread, with nourishment, if we make the bread and we place it into our inner oven, have that well stoked, and have our fire to the divine well inflamed, then we can bake our bread, get to that higher state of Torah, bitanur echad, by focusing on the one, on the divine, like Hashem, like we say in Shema, Hashem echad, that one. And by us using the 10 women, that means our 10 inner attributes, the 10 sfirot that we carry, that when they are fully aligned to the echad and to the one, then we get to a place where when we eat we will not be filled, meaning that it will be infinite showering, infinite blessings. We'll never be satisfied because there's always going to be more and more and more, not because that there's anything lacking or wanting, but to the contrary, it would be endless, endless blessings. So here are just two examples how we could take from the text and see something that seems negative and transform it into positive. And so that is, again, the role of the artist. We take experiences that may even have affected us deleteriously and elevated our personal experiences in a visual form to move others to reveal in even the spectator's life, to make that connection, to be able to elevate oneself higher above whatever experiences we have. And Yona's art that you just showed actually was quite revealing, because you had like what looked like silver and like copper or gold, and that was also reminiscent in, let me see if I could find it quickly, in actually a verse of one of the curses of the Torah portion. It's in verse 19. I'll just do this. Here, I'll share screen again. Thank you, dear Safaria. Okay, here it says in 19, I will make your skies like iron, that's artzachem kanachusha, and your earth like copper. And the Midrash and Rashi explains that iron is totally seals off moisture. It's totally does not allow any humidity or moisture in, whereas copper, in the way they viewed it back in biblical times, was able to sweat and create moisture. So the ideal is to have the heavens like copper to allow moisture down, and the earth to be dry enough to receive the rain, so the earth would be iron. So the curse is the reversal, that the sky is sealed off from any moisture like iron, and earth is like copper and sweating, and which then can create mildew and can damage the crops. So revealing one for the other, showing that there are layers to the very same phenomenon, that peeling away heavens to show the rain, the water, or even at times sealing up the negative, that it should not, that it stays below the surface, and it becomes almost like the fertilizer to grow the blessings, to let that sprout ahead. And maybe that's another metaphor indeed, that even our negative experiences in life can become the fertilizer from which we can sprouts forth the blessings even more than they would have otherwise.
Wow. Thank you. Now we're kind of like bringing both of those concepts together. Yona, would you please bring us on the journey to see more of your art that explores these themes?
Yes, if you could show the next image. It will be the one after that. After that one. Okay, here. Okay, so these are two images of the very first Jewish themed paintings I ever did, but already my interest has never changed. When I saw these paintings, these are from like the year 2000. I realized that what interested me in Judaism to begin with has always remained steadfast. So here, these are paintings about the Urim and the Thummim, which were this mysterious object that the high priest used to wear in biblical times. And it was a sort of a plate that carried 12 semi-precious stones, and each stone had the name of a tribe engraved in it. And in times of trouble, while we were wandering through the desert, the high priest would ask for guidance, he would meditate, and then light would pour out through these letters, to different letters in different stones, and these would spell out messages. And when I first read about that, I thought, this is so amazing. It's like an oracle. I'd never heard of anything like that before. And that was the very first time that I started to see visual images while I was reading the Torah. And it then propelled me to make these images. The inner light was so important to me. Like, I'm from a country, the Netherlands, where a lot of, the painters that we all know, like Rembrandt, Van Gogh, Vermeer, light is always so important for us. Probably because in the Netherlands, we don't get too much of it. It's very dreary weather half the time. But also, I really was interested in like Jewish mysticism. It's what drew me to Judaism. And if you could show the next one, Verwer. So this was that one, the black one was the tribe of Joseph, at least the first two letters. This one is the tribe of God, G-A-D. And the letters are written in not the alphabet that we now know as the Hebrew alphabet, but the way it was before we were captured and went to Babylon. So this is like what they call Proto-Canaanite alphabet. And again, it's like when you look at this, it almost looks like you see like the universe with planets, etc., which is not what I intended at all. I just wanted to convey like the mystery of these stones, the mystical light. And when I was working on the paintings for this parsha, I realized I'm sort of doing the same thing in a totally different matter. Anyway, that's basically all I have to say about it for now. I would like to go into how it really has been a collaboration with Rabbi Thaler, because I thought in advance he was going to explain the parsha to me, and then I was going to make a piece. But instead, it became really a collaboration. He would point things out to me. I'd already started making sketches. Then I realized, oh, I did it wrong. Like he said something about that the light is coming from above, where it says something in the parsha about walking with God. And so the light comes from above. And I realized, oh, I had mine in the wrong direction, because I had mine actually vertically, because I like that shape so much. And I realized, no, that doesn't work at all. So that's just one of the things where Rabbi Thaler influenced me. Did you want to say something about that, Rabbi Thaler?
Well, we thank you, Yona, and yes, certainly has been mutually collaborative. As someone that has some background in the visual arts, I also love to connect the inner vision with the outer tactile art, artifact of art, and yes, the verticality of it makes that connection of both the light, the or, as we call it, the light, which the word or is the same gematria numerical value as the word raz, which means mystery. That it is something that is of even esoteric, beyond that even comprehension. Then we reveal it as light. So too there is the rain itself that we have in the Torah portion, which is also showers down from above. And so these are the two main metaphors given for our connection with the divine, light and shefa, the flow, that makes the channeling to receive the inspiration of art and the blessings thereof. So the difference of light and rain is that light is more ephemeral, right? It's not something as tangible, whereas rain is something that we feel literally on, as on a tactile physical level. So they're both necessary, both the be open to receive that light of revelation, and also to let it permeate in us, like being showered upon, literally. And and again, it's a two-way flow. It's both from up down, trickle down, and also percolating up. And in fact, the rabbis explain that's why we see all this talk about walking. It says more than once, and it says it's as if you will be continuously walking. And the Kabbalists explain it that it's not just one way, from up down or down up, but it's simultaneously in this loop that we receive and then we give back up. It descends, it's transmitted down, and then we channel it up. We reflect it back up, what we receive, and that accelerates it and even creates the blessing itself. So the blessing is not just a one-way receiving mechanism, but it's rather it's what we make out of what we receive is what really makes the blessing, and that in fact is echoed by another known verse in Psalms that also talks about this idea of walking and motion and turning negativity, even tragedy, into positivity. And what if I can share the screen, please, Dvir. Thank you. Oh, great. So, and what I'm referring to is Psalms 126, which we say before at the beginning of the grace after meal, especially in Shabbat. We say Hazorim b'dima b'rina yiksaru. Those that sowed in tears, with difficulty, with real, not seeing any benefits yet, and actually seems really labor intensive. They will be able to reap with joy. And then the verse continues, Haloch yelechu vacha. Go, it doesn't say once go, but double going. Going you shall go, moving you shall move, ubocho, and crying. Most nosemesha chazara, the one who's carrying the seeds, when you're in that state, even while you're crying, but if you are planting while you are in this state of motion, you're not passive, but you're taking in even the negative experiences that bring us tears, and you're able to still go ahead and whether in general, in our service, be proactive in positive ways, and for the artist to take those kernels of grain and make it art, then then we will reap the return with joy. The bundles of sheaths of grain will grow. We will use even those elements of tragedy for fodder and for the source to have the greatest blessing grow out of it. So it's us to be open to be the vessels for the blessings, and to know how to take even things that seem like darkness, like we speak in art. There is negative light. We don't call it as much darkness. At times we call it is the light, just in the negative form. And all we need to do, like the negative in photography, is flip it and show that the dark is really itself the light, and the form to channel the infinite blessings.
Wow. Thank you. I want to open it up for questions we have such a beautiful audience here today. But first, I want to ask Yona that you had described that both share the same elements between kind of the desert and the water and balancing both. And the one way that they're different is that they're flipped, but another thing you had described is that there's more of an opening. And I'm curious, the quality of the opening, the shape of the opening, the actual gap distance. I'm curious if you can kind of elaborate more on that thought.
Yeah, the one on the right, which is the blessings. First of all, let me just go back to something that Rabbi Thaler said. You may notice that each one on the inside has like a beam of light going through the middle, and it goes from the top to the bottom, and the sides I, on purpose made darker. And that relates to, us communicating with, the divine, and the divine communicating back with us. Like, indeed, it's a two-way street. But then the one on the right, the blessings, it is already much more open than the other one. It's hard to tell from this frontal view, but side views might show it better, that the curl on the right is really like a curl. Actually, you know what? I may not have sent you a site. Yeah, you can see it a little bit here. So they both are already like much more open and ready to withdraw these crusts. And I think of these crusts really as us being crusted over by living our life in a sort of humdrum way, if that's what we do. And, we don't really pay a whole lot of attention. We just go through life and things sort of start to, crust over. And you need something to open it up before you can really open yourself to these new experiences. So for the blessings, indeed, you have to, really, it opens a lot bigger. Not sure how else to say it. Well, with the curses, it's still very close, and they're very flat planes. There's no curl in them yet. So that's basically the difference between the two. But I have to admit that I initially planned to have the golden one be the blessings. So the idea was the whole blessings piece was going to be golden and copper and whatever. And the curse was going to be dark, and it was going to be like lead and, the dark rain. And then I realized, no, in order for them to be reversible, they really have to have, more in common. So at the last minute, I kind of switched them. And then I realized, and then I had to change the shapes to accommodate the theme. But so it's been the kind of work where I constantly had to adjust things, and it's a different way of working I've ever done, because the subject matter is so esoteric in a way that, to grab onto something as an artist, it was hard to get a grip on it, but eventually I did.
Wow. I'm curious also, Rabbi Thaler, kind of what Yona described as there's many parallels with what happens later in Deuteronomy, with the two different mountains. One on one side, there's the positives and the negatives, but a lot of what you had described in your sermon was the opposite of how the oven contains the entirety of everything, and kind of the unity of seeing both elements of both blessing and curses both entangled in one. How does it manifest differently later when they're disentangled from one another, and there's like both ideas are distinct, and then how do those elements kind of play differently when they're at the foot of Mount Sinai?
Well, great question. And just on the simple pshat, meaning of the text, a main difference between the way the blesses and curses are mentioned in our Torah portion and the way they are in the Deuteronomy is, guess what is missing in our Torah portion? The word blessing and the word curse. It's not mentioned once. In Deuteronomy, there's a list. Baruch atah ba'ir, Baruch atah b'sadeh. Blessed are you in the city, in the field. It uses over like a refrain. Blessed, Baruch, 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 Baruch. And then Arur are you, and the Arur, what have you, cursed. And then it goes into the Tochacha calamities. And also, so you see later on there is this bifurcation, and more. It's giving us the perspective of how we experience it in the real world, on the surface level. That sure, bad is bad and good is good. You know, that is the way the normal mode of life is. No, you know, if there's a tragedy, we're not meant to be non-emotional or not to be real with the moment. When something negative happens to us, it affects us. We have laws of, when we lose a loved one, there are laws of avelut, mourning. Where there are days when we do commemorate terrible calamities and what have you. And then conversely, when there are blessings, we're meant to bless it and to focus on the good. What our Torah portion is giving us, when we're still, like you're saying, closer to the mountain and still fresh, like from last week's Torah portion, where we say Bahar Sinai, we're just coming from the mountain, is we are still under the aura of realizing that from the perspective of the source, there is a state of beyond good and evil, to paraphrase Nietzsche and others, lahavdil or not. That there is a state that which appears to be negative may actually be, and it is really, and it's not an illusion. You know, bad is bad, especially for us. At the other hand, there is a reason for it all. And that is what our Torah portion is telling us, is showing us that if we're tapped into that source, then through our work, it doesn't come easy. The Rashi says that Bechukotai Thaler, to go means with amelim, you have to struggle. It's not an easy task to see positive in everything. But when you do, then Teilechu, the Rabbi, there's a Hasidic commentator says the word Teilechu, if you know Hebrew with gematria, let me just pull it up. The word, share screening again. So the word Teilechu, Taf is Lamed Chaf Vav, is 456. 456 is exactly 2 times the gematria of Baruch, blessing. Blessing is 228. Teilechu is 456. It's telling us that if you're in that state of constant focus and working on yourself to see the good, then you will see it's all double blessing. Even the curse itself is blessing. That's why there's embedded in the text, even though it's not openly mentioned blessing, but the Teilechu is giving us already the double blessing. So that is you know, where there's terrible things happening out there in the world these days, of course, but we see that those that have a positive attitude are able to overcome even the tragedies of war, and able to be energized from it, to fight the evil, and to work towards a time of peace, as the Torah portion continues. V'natati shalom, right? I will bring peace. Peace is the unity of opposites. Things that seem even like negative are revealed for its underlining blessing, and that is expressed in a way of bringing harmony and peace into the world.
Wow, thank you. You're just such a treasure trove of knowledge and connections. Yona, Susan is curious about the dimensions, and I'll add to that question the process of making this. I'm curious if you'd kind of elaborate on this. This in itself was something that was novel and a unique process for you.
Right. Also, Susan brought up something very interesting in the chat. She said, this reminds me of something I just heard this morning in yoga class based on Buddhist teachings. And to me, it just says that all this knowledge, it's universal. You know, we are Jews, we have our own ways of dealing with the material, as it were. But in a way, this is, you know, all the big religions have this, you know, have this. So I love that you brought it up, Susan. The sizes, they are 2 feet long by 20 inches high. And the blessings piece, I think, is like 8 inches deep, and the other one is like 3 inches deep. The way I made them was with help of somebody else. Someone who's on the call is Yona Benjamin. She is an artist who will present next month at the Amen Institute. And she got me an intern who came once a week and helped me construct the pieces I showed you earlier for the Samaritans exhibition, and also for this. So these particular pieces were made out of a core board, and then we sculpted kind of these panels on them, and then I went over them with Venetian plaster because I love that material. You can polish it. You can, you know, some of it was metallic, so it's like an earthy material. And while I was making one of the pieces, the one with that looks like lead, I was laughing. I thought, it's a little bit like Anselm Kiefer almost, an artist who I love, but I didn't realize that, you know, that I would ever make a piece that would remind me a little bit of him. Anyway, so, and the inside pieces are acrylic paint. And I must say, I love this breaking out of the 2 dimensions. I've done it before, like 20 years ago, I made a series like this, but it was very convoluted with like chicken wire and certain glues, and you had to build the whole thing up and weighed a ton afterwards. I've also done other things out of the 3D, which were with Cynthia Beth Rubin, who is on this call. She and I have collaborated on pieces where we introduced augmented reality, which is that you have a piece that's 2-dimensional, and then there are little embedded videos that we made that, so that also kind of breaks up the whole 2-dimensional aspect. So this series, I'd love to continue it, and I'm very excited that this got it started. So thank you both.
Wow, yes, Toby has a question.
Yes, I want to just say to you, Yona, I love that you brought up Kiefer, and I'm thrilled you did, because I was looking at it and it feels like a Jewish version of a Kiefer. It's much less angry. And I really, no, it really does. I mean, it looks holy. It looks holy. And my favorite thing you said today, both of you spoke very interestingly, but Yona, what you said about looking at the work and letting it live and move back and forth with what it was supposed to be, to me is so Jewish, that you let the work have its own soul. So I love this work. It's much quieter than you usually do, but it feels like you really listened to what the Parsha was about. It felt very honest. So I feel very honored to have listened to you both go back and forth, and it felt, I'm so happy you brought up Kiefer, because I wanted to say it and then I decided not to say it, and then I thought, maybe I should say it. But since you said it, it looks much cleaner than he usually does, and you're not going to have to sweep up afterwards. I don't know if you remember the piece of his at MoMA, every week that have to sweep up all the wheat. So I'm happy there's nothing to sweep up.
Thank you, Toby.
Really, very beautiful, very powerful. And I like the way the two of you worked. And I really like that you went back and forth, that it wasn't a monologue between either one of you. So I hope you continue learning the way I did with the person I had the pleasure of working with. It's a real treat. So I enjoyed every minute of the conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us. I know you're so very busy, Toby, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and
I love what you said about it having its own soul, to allow the piece to do its own thing. Yeah, the ego has to be removed.
Exactly.
Which is also Susan's shadow. That's also a Buddhist concept. And yeah, the art has to do its thing. And I think it takes a while before you can get to that point, but yes, I'm glad I got there. Thank you, Toby.
And from one artist to the other, you're helping to reveal that, according to the word for uman, the artist in Hebrew is uman, which is also the same word as emunah, as faith. And that there's almost a prophetic and super rational tapping into that the artist does to bring out the spirit from within and creating that visual, physical object. And so that's why making something even more than two-dimensional is so apropos here. We feel like we're mamish peeling away to find the blessing, or like the Torah scroll itself, we unfurl. That there is that just opening up the gates to allow what's within us to shine out.
Yeah, Yona, what you did is you really let the piece speak for itself. I thought of Thaler when you were talking with Thaler in the Shadow of God, because when I looked at the earlier pieces, and I think they're good photographs, I don't think they're a problem. Maybe you'll do it even better, but I like the way you see the inside and the outside. I like, and I also love the fact that they're not that different anymore. I think that was really important, really important.
Yeah, very beautiful. And
I hope you do a whole series.
Yes,
do a lot of them. Yeah,
I will,
because
Toby.
I think you just tapped the beginning. Since you brought up Kiefer did a beautiful series of books that he did. I don't know if you remember, with plaster and other materials, and there were like 15 of them. I think you should do a series, and I think you should go a little bigger, but that's a taste issue. But because I feel they could really hold a wall, like even like 3 feet by 5. They really look like they could be massive.
Yes, I can't wait. Like, these were the very first pieces that I did in this technique. So I needed to keep them manageable because I didn't know what I was doing. But now that I realize, yes, I can manage this material, I can make them much bigger. And usually I work much bigger. This for me is really small, and I'm not, it's like, oh, it's almost too small for me. I like something like, 6 feet, it's my height by 3 or 4 feet. That's my ideal size. So
that will leave for Richard Serra for the big ones.
It should be Yona, not Richard Serra. Even though it should be Yona. Yona, you should do it.
Thank you.
Beautiful how both of you were at the bookends of this book of Leviticus, and even though you were both addressing content that's very different, being very honest about it, removing the initial reaction of anger to being cursed out, or Toby, in your piece, you were dealing with the sacrificial services, how both of you came from a very honest place and quelled it from the initial reaction of anger that can often cloud the getting deep into the conversation. We have a question from Karen.
It wasn't so much a question. I mean, actually, Rabbi, when you talked about the unfurling, what I was seeing in the pieces is just that the blessings actually looks almost like a Sefer Torah, starting to unfurl. And in some ways that curvilinear, I think, sort of addresses that staying in line. And the one that represents curses, Yona, feels like there's a rupture and that you can see that line. And so I was thinking a lot while you were talking, Rabbi, about the blessing and the curse. I think there still is this idea that there is some kind of rupture that happens, and that maybe what that is that line stays open. You've got the line still there, that light line of connecting, that it's an opportunity to go back and to try and sort of reflect and re-engage through that kind of rupture. So I think they're really exquisite pieces. They're aesthetically just extraordinary. And it's been a powerful conversation. So thank you both.
Thank you too, Karen. You remind me, what is that line from Leonard Cohen, that there's a crack in the dark to let the light in, right?
Right.
And that is really how we become co-creators from the God. The very first physical phenomenon was light. Let there be light, and that is the role of the artist and filmmaker, photographer, and is to bring the light in, literally, metaphorically, on all levels.
Right. And there's a way back, you know?
Yeah. So and that ultimately it speaks about in Kabbalah that if the unfiltered light can be too overwhelming, it could be almost like too much blessing, surplus. So we need to, that is also the role of the artist, is in a way even to give it its seemingly limited form and expression in a specific way for us to take in the light and image. You know, there is certainly modern art, surrealist art, you know, deconstructive art too, which seems like all chaos and discombobulated. But there again, it's to move us and to ultimately for us to perceive that even the things that seem like out of whack, you know, lacking symmetry and what the conventional forms of aesthetics, that even there's something of beauty and blessing. So in a way, there's something very modernist, or postmodernist even, with our Torah portion.
Yona suggested from a Sadhguru who says that there's a burden of the memory of our past, and perhaps that there's something about, like, even if you move on towards blessing, you still carry the burden of the curses or of the past, and seeing that as something that's very present in these images.
Wow.
Celia, what's the final question of the presentation?
It's not so much a question as a comment as to where these might go and what you could do with them, because the discussion brought up a lot of things, you know, for me, particularly the notion of turning, like the idea of turning the page, turning around, and like I have studied a little bit of word etymology, like in the turning, the words for distaff and spindle and being, becoming are the same in German. I also tried to look it up in Old High German, and I tried to look it up in Hebrew. Now, it's actually rather interesting that Hebrew has a lot of words which have antithetical meanings or opposite meanings. So they're like a battery. One end is negative, one is positive, but it's a battery, it's a polarity. In other words, they're together, they're joined together. And to me, this is a form of thought which is prior to rational discourse, and which is the essence of music, possibly poetry, but also fine art, in that those are the métiers in which we can hear tones simultaneously. When you can entertain, like, you know, in music, when you have a dramatic passage along with something lyrical, but they're woven together. So I don't distinguish them. In fact, to me, all great art has that potential to bring these ambiguous and ambivalent and antithetical meanings together. I'm not a big fan of the current literalness of radical art, where they're supposed to be about a cause. So with that sort of set of ideas in mind, I could see that you could extend these in a long, almost Asian scroll format, with the action of turning the page, opening and closing, being a very powerful element. Even the suggestion to the viewer that they could do that would bring up the phenomena of boon and curse, you know, blessing and curse, which is common to all religions. I mean, it's there in Hinduism and Judaism. And so the idea of turning, I think, is an important notion in here. And also the duality or the antithetical meaning. I think I did think of Kiefer as well, like Toby did, but I thought of the fixity of his books. His books are big and heavy and open, right? They're always open at one page when you see them displayed. Yours are inviting. They're inviting the viewer to participate in the book, in the phenomena of turning and changing. So, yeah. So I just think that was very interesting, that you could take the notion of the book as an element, not of verbal fixity or of a story, but as of a kind of music and, you know, a kind of, if you will, the aleph, the opening of everything, right? I think that that is one of the powerful things in this. So take it further.
Thank you. Those are great observations, Celia. And I really, while you were talking, I already got visions of things I could do. So really, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for having attended. It's been so marvelous to hear all of the ideas and thoughts kind of over the past several months. This image has been building itself and forming, and that where it was a couple weeks ago in the visions that you had, the pieces spoke for themselves and created themselves, and that's really just a beautiful organic process along the creative process of thinking of ideas, and then how for somebody you can see it's a Sefer Torah, for somebody else you can see it and it's a copper earth and iron sky, and the layers and layers that are within it. I could say for myself, when I first saw it, I thought that it was the curses were along the Egyptian Nile, and the Meitzarim, the narrow path of the Nile, kind of emerging into the two-sided split Red Sea, and how that kind of is the moment of blessing where you walk along the path through the split sea. But all of these metaphors and all of these ideas come together in a way to allow us to understand the depth and profundity of our own healing processes, our own conversations with God. And it couldn't have been a figurative piece that could open up such complexity of thought. So thank you, Yona. Thank you, Rabbi Thaler, for having guided us along this journey. And thank you, everyone, as we journey through the Red Sea, inching closer and closer to Mount Sinai, where we'll receive an abundance of blessings and curses, and it'll be up to us to unpack them throughout our lives. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you, dear Devere, and your parents. Thanks for just to see you, what greatness they produced here with you.
Take care.
Take care. Shalom and Shabbat Shalom, and have a great pathway, as you said, towards the holy mountain. Keep on moving.